excited to have you on this webinar. You're gonna have really engaging time with us today. We've got a couple of people that you're gonna hear from today, but really the focus is gonna be on hearing from Gainsight, which is one of Insight's portfolio companies. I know we have a mix of individuals that are attending that are part of the Insight portfolio. This is also open to the public, so if you're joining and you're not part of Insight's portfolio, it doesn't really matter. I think you're gonna hear some things that could be applied to basically any company out there. So really we're gonna be talking about how Gainsight leveraged the lean process to decrease time to value specifically for their customer success team, which will be exciting. So Pablo Dominguez, I'm the operating partner at Insight for sales and customer success. You're gonna hear from Mehta, the CEO of Gainsight, and Ashvin, the Chief Customer Officer responsible for CS, also at Gainsight. And then we're joined today by Matt May, who's one of our key partners at Insight, who is a strategist and lean professional. So you'll hear from him initially in case you're wondering, hey, what is this lean thing? How did Gainsight do this? We're gonna give you some of those principles up first before you hear from Gainsight. And why I'm excited about this is actually one of my colleagues, Nalini Nath, had sent me a tweet, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, about how the operating room teams at a hospital were trying to figure out how to optimize how to efficiently operate on people, and they were bumping into each other. And operating rooms, they have all these different machines and tools everywhere, and they had taken the lean principles actually that the F1 race teams had put together, because if you've ever seen F1 race, and Matt will talk about it in a second, they're extremely efficient. So I thought it was actually awesome how doctors were looking at race car drivers and how to optimize their process. And so we've worked on this process lean with a lot of our portfolio companies. So I'll hand it over to Matt so you can learn a little bit more about lean, and then we'll go directly to hearing from the Gainsight team on what they did. So Matt May, over to you.
All righty, thank you, Pablo. Welcome, everyone. Gosh, it's been, if I look at the calendar, it's been exactly 11 months to the day where we got to spend time with about 24 of Gainsight professionals. And the challenge was, could we, over the course of a day and a half, take 24 hand-picked professionals from across Gainsight who touch the sales and customer success process daily, and not only train them on a powerful method for performance improvement, but then point that method simultaneously towards some of the bold goals that Nick and Ashvin and Pablo had set around time to value. And emerge from that day and a half with a portfolio of well thought through concepts, complete with an experimental plan to prove them out quickly without disrupting ongoing operations, to do so frugally, meaning without any capital expense in the way of additional personnel or purchasing new technology. And to do that successfully, you need a method. And a method that has the right blend of principles and people and processes and tools. And the method that we chose to help Gainsight's, to kick off Gainsight's foray into this improving time to value was lean and lean thinking. And the reason that we chose it was fairly simple. We had seen the dramatic gains that we had been working with other portfolio companies that Insight had invested in. And so lean was the method that was chosen. And so it probably makes sense for a nickel's worth of definition around lean. Lean, by the way, I don't know, I'm going to assume that everyone has a different connotation of what lean is and where it comes from. But if you're in the Silicon Valley area, you're probably most familiar with lean attached to the word startup. About a decade ago, Eric Ries kind of started the lean startup movement, and it was based on continuous improvement. And that continuous improvement had its foundations really, and most notably, with a company called Toyota, which I had the benefit of spending nearly a decade fully embedded in Toyota. Interesting enough, lean is not a Toyota term. It was coined by a gentleman who's now the CEO of Google's autonomous driving division, Waymo. John Krafcik, a very smart individual. He was formerly CEO of TrueCar. Before that, he was CEO of Hyundai. I've got to meet the man. He's just one of those brilliant thinkers and operators, all meshed into one person. But there was a study in the late 80s that looked at production, manufacturing processes across the globe 20 different countries, $5 million study coming out of MIT, and John Krafcik had left his job at Toyota to join that study. And he coined a term meant to convey the essence of the Toyota production system, and he called it lean. So lean is just the absence of waste or slack in the system. Now, that's a great definition. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient to adopt as a method, because it doesn't tell us what exactly we need to do. So what I have shown here, just in front of you, is called the Wheel of Work. It was designed by the chief engineer of Toyota Production System. And it basically says, no matter what work you look at, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a Formula One pit crew team, whether it's surgeons in an operating room, whether it is a sales process, you can think about that work as in 3 big buckets, parts of the pie. About 25% of it is stuff the customer actually cares about and is willing to pay for. That's value-added work. About 25% of it is non-value added work, which is the stuff that you have to do, but the customer really doesn't care about it and doesn't want to pay for it. And the rest, nearly 50%, is what I affectionately call stupid stuff. It's waste. It's slack. And it comes in 8 different flavors, and you see them there before you. It's overproduction, overprocessing, conveyance, meaning moving things, in handoffs one place to another across silos. It's waiting. We all hate waiting. It's inventory buildup. That's why car dealerships put big monkeys on top of their dealerships at the end of every month to try and move that excess inventory. It's errors and rework. We all hate that. Motion, unnecessary motion, and untapped employee creativity. And we chose that as the method going forward. And if you're not really familiar with the notion of value-added work versus non-value-added work versus waste, the easiest thing, and why it's so very difficult to do in knowledge work, and especially software, is because it's hard to see non-value added work. It's hard to see waste. But as Pablo mentioned, boy, you sure can see it if you're a fan of Formula One racing, which, by the way, is truly rocket science. I don't know if you've ever seen a Formula One pit crew, but take a look at what it is. So we love that example because it very clearly shows value-added work. Value-added work from the driver's perspective is time on the track. From the audience perspective, it's being able to see the driver on the track, whether that's on television or live. What is non-value-added work is all the stuff that has to be done in that pit stop. And what you see is a complete lack of waste. You saw a 3-second changeover, because any time, any motion, any errors result in a loss for that driver and a loss for the audience. If we could go to the next slide, I'll share real quickly before I turn it over to Nick, what we did at Gainsight. We started with a day and a half, as I mentioned, and what we wanted to do was sort of give that Formula One kind of experience and look at work in 2 different ways. One's kind of the natural, intuitive, messy, handoff, error-prone kind of way. And what you see here is a factory setup, and perhaps you recognize a few individuals there. And we tracked things. We basically built cars, the normal way, the Detroit way, if you will. And then what we did was to say, well, let's take a look at what we could do if we were the Formula One pit crew. And if you look at the next slide, what you see is that everyone is huddled together. It looks very much like that pit crew. Everyone's got a job to do. And we tracked everything. And we tracked actual quantitative metrics around sales, around late deliveries, around errors, work in process. And basically what we did between round 1 and round 2 was to the tune of about 4x improve our quality, cost, and speed. That became the mindset change that allowed us to move into the second day, where we had 4 different teams, 2 from sales, 2 from customer success, looking at some audacious goals that Nick and Ashvin had set. And we emerged with those concepts that we would take forward as part of the overall strategy that Nick is going to lay out for improving time to value. So thank you very much. Nick, to you.
Matt, thanks so much. And I will say I sat in on that workshop myself personally, as I'm the CEO of Gainsight. And I really, first, I love the methodology and the way that it was delivered. So highly recommend it. but also, as you'll see, it's had a big impact on our business. And I'll also say big thanks to Insight. We're proud to be an Insight portfolio company, and Pablo and the team have done an amazing job giving us a lot of access to resources like this lean workshop. So I'll just spend two minutes talking about why this has been so important for our business, but I think I'll be explaining kind of motherhood and apple pie here a little bit, but I still think it's important to kind of understand why this is so critical. And then Ashvin's going to take you through the how of how we did it and some of the impact it's had. So if you want to animate this slide out, Ashvin, I think if you think about like the three biggest metrics in running a SaaS company, customer acquisition costs, how much money does it cost you to get new customers, your margins, both your gross margins and your operating margins, and your net renewal rate. I'd argue time to value is critical for all three of these. It really is the triple threat. And I think that if you look at some of the most highly valued public and private companies out there, underlying theme will be good time to value or fast time to value. From my vantage point as a CEO, the way I look at it is if we have improved time to value, we're going to have a lower customer acquisition cost because customers will buy more quickly because it's easier to set up and there's less effort and less cost. You don't have to wait as long to make sure you're ready. So there's clearly a value in terms of customer acquisition costs. In addition, most companies don't necessarily make money on services or break even. And so therefore, just by reducing the amount of services you need, you'll improve your customer acquisition costs. Speaking of that, for us, we do have a professional service team. We have an amazing team. But obviously, the more we can have this process streamlined, the better our margins will be, not just in professional services, but for the overall business. Because honestly, the more we have to spend money on selling and also post-sale and implementation, the lower our margins. So we know for sure this actually had an impact on our margins and our acquisition costs, which have gone radically better in the last year and a half. And then improved net renewal rate. The theory is that if you get your customers to value more quickly, they will be more ready to buy more stuff more quickly, right? It's kind of obvious. But when you see it in your own P&L, it really jumps out how important it is. So I'd argue time to value for probably all of your businesses, and definitely ours, is one of the most important initiatives you can prioritize as a business. And if you go to the next slide, just to set up Ashvin, what we're going to talk about is kind of how Gainsight approached this, obviously in partnership with that lean workshop you just saw. So if you've seen the movie Inception, this is going to be a little bit meta because this is how we are approaching time to value in our own business. But obviously the reason we want to share this is we know a lot of our customers in the customer success world are really passionate about time to value too. So we'll share ourselves as kind of a case study. Over to you, Ashvin.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, and we did a recent survey like a few weeks back, and we asked CS leaders where they're spending their time and what are top priorities. And 80% of them said optimizing onboarding is the number one thing they're focused on for next year. So this is, to Nick's point, very meta for a lot of you on this call and who probably will listen to this offline as well. So let me walk through and for more details on what I covered, we've also published a blog post on how we thought about the process, what changes we made, thanks to the partnership with Matt and Insight.
Hey, Ashwin.
Yes.
I'm sorry, this is Travis from Insight. It's a little difficult to hear you. If you could get a little closer to the microphone, I think everyone would appreciate it.
Okay, any better?
A little bit.
Oh, really? Okay, got it. All right, let me try again. Any better?
I can't hear him at all. This is Jackie.
Yeah, it's a little challenging.
Okay, give me a second. I'm just going to dial in using my phone.
All right, perfect. Thank you. And sorry, everybody. We'll continue on. I just didn't want him to continue to go through this and all of you miss out on the great insights that he's providing.
No, thanks, Travis. Now we need the DJ back to just get a little intermission music. So, yeah, no, this is what Ashvin is going to go through. I think is it's something I hear a lot about when I talk to CS leaders as well. And what you're going to see is, at least from our vantage point, some of it is product, and Ashvin's going to talk about that. We made a lot of changes in the product and making it easier to onboard and all that. But some of it's definitely process. It's interesting from my vantage point as CEO, how much you can change without even changing the technology, just in the sequencing of operations, which is what you're going to see in a little bit. And I think that kind of comes out of some of the lean work that we learned about from Matt. So the other thing I'll say, by the way, just as a little plug for Matt's workshop, it's also very engaging. One thing we found was it was kind of a good bonding experience because we had, as Matt showed that photo, in the photo, there was like our legal person who's involved in contracts and getting deals done, and our salespeople and implementation people and customer success people and finance people. It's actually a really cool kind of way to get everyone together around kind of a common problem. So if you're looking for something to break the boredom the monotony of Zoom meetings, I actually think this is a pretty good one. And Matt, I'm assuming you have a way to do this virtually as well.
Yes, we do. And that's what we've been doing for the last 6 months. Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
No problem.
Matt and I are kicking one off in about 45 minutes or so. Ashvin, are you?
I'm back. Can you hear me okay now?
100 times better. Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right. The joys of internet crapping out in the middle of webinars. Cool. All right. Thank you, Nick, for plugging that in between. But we've got the blog post, as I said. You can refer to it for more details as well. So the first step that we did as part of that workshop and then offline as well was starting to break down. We've obviously done over 1,000 implementations. So we had the luxury of data to then go back and say, where do we actually spend time as part of our professional services and onboarding process? And we split that time out between different pockets of activities that need to happen throughout that workshop. What we saw was like doing some pre-work strategy, which is that first box that you see there, first bar that you see there, where we talk about what do you actually want to accomplish and what are the best practices, etc. Like that was the first part that took some time. And then like the other part where we saw an opportunity to apply the lean principles and reduce waste was the idea around data integrations and data workshops. So what you see around the second bar and the fourth bar, so data workshop and data integrations, those were a big time investment for both the clients as well as the Gainsight team to actually go in and say, that's a meaningful enough chunk. What can we do to reduce time in those buckets? And then the third area was the configuration piece, which is like actually making things, customizing things in the product itself that is best suited for the client's needs. That was the third piece around configuration. So we approached this in saying, where can we actually reduce the waste in these three different areas, pre-work or strategy, data, and configuration. And where we landed or our learnings was basically three different pieces. So in terms of standard best practice configurations, what we learned was there were certain features or processes that were common across almost all implementations. And we said, if they are so common, let's try to make sure that we are bringing that right off the bat and there isn't a discussion and back and forth about these things. Let's just build our prescription, our best practices into the product itself. The second piece we started thinking about was companies don't want everything in one go. A lot of companies want a phased methodology and they want certain pieces built out. They want time in that product. They want to experience it and then keep building out with more value added to that piece. And then the third piece was data integrations, as I mentioned, and they were taking 30 to 40% of the implementation time. So what can we actually do to reduce time in that piece? So I'll cover each one of these in more detail. So on the actual configuration piece, where we landed was saying, let's build out this type of a checklist in the product itself. So our professional services team working with the product team actually built out this checklist in the product. We call it a configuration wizard. And it's basically like go through each one of these and say, we are going to set this up. Next is bringing in your customers into Gainsight. The third one is setting up your customer view into Gainsight, which we call as the customer 360. The fourth one would be scorecard. Like all of these things were so common across all implementations that we just built it into the product itself. Then the second piece we acted upon was taking a more phased methodology as opposed to like a big bang rollout and started saying, let's split this out by week and saying, what do we actually deliver in each week so that the client can actually go in and see the benefits on a week-to-week basis or day-to-day basis, and almost an agile sprint-based approach to solving the implementation process. And so we set this up such that in week 0, there is a prep and kickoff. We walk through the configuration wizard in week 1 and 2. And then users are live in the system at the end of week 2, where you can now go in and see the customer 360, the health score, all of the things that were as part of that wizard. Then we add on more things and say, your key objectives that you want to accomplish in Gainsight are X. We've done the first part of this at the end of week 2. Let's start thinking about what the roadmap should be for the next couple of weeks. And so in week 3 and week 4, we add certain other customization. It could include additional data sources. It could include additional processes or workflows that you want into Gainsight, built into Gainsight, etc. All along this, we do it such that we are training the client also to continue this ongoing work into the future once the implementation process is complete. So phased methodology was the second big area that we invested energy in. And then the third one, which was the data integrations piece, because we were seeing certain types of data sources come up more often than others, we started building out these data connectors in the product itself. Again, really good collaboration between the services team and the product and engineering organizations to say, in most of our customers, we tend to see X type of data sources come up more often than not. Can we actually build these out as connectors so that we don't have to go through a custom process for every implementation? And it's more clicks rather than actual configuration. And so this was a third piece that we set up to reduce that 30 to 40% of time, which was that data integrations piece. And we approached this both by couple of interesting ones. One is the right-hand side that you see here. Those are things that we've set up as integrations. And then we also have our partners build those out on working with the Gainsight engineering team. So that way, the number of connectors that we set up scales very quickly over time. And then finally, we've had 3 quarters now because we started this process at the beginning of this year. We've had 3 quarters to actually see the improvement and see the progress. And it's been staggering. Like, I obviously wanted to see good improvement, Nick and I, but this has been incredible progress within a very short amount of time. And we were approximately 13 to 16 weeks to actually do the end-to-end onboarding process. Because of the phased methodology, because of all the integrations that we've been able to set up late last year and going into this year, that average time has now dropped to about 4.7 weeks, such that there are certain customers who actually want to move even faster than that. And the fastest one has been 9 days, because those clients were wanted very specific things built into Gainsight, and we just prioritized that as part of that first go live in the week and a half, 2 weeks. And so this gives the clients the ability to say what they want, whether, and to prioritize time to value. And we are able to flex depending on the client need. So this has been incredible progress for us, which obviously, to Nick's point earlier, has benefits across the company. And most importantly, it's really big benefit to our clients because they can now experience Gainsight as quickly as possible.
Hey, Ashvin, there's a question. Daniel, I don't know, feel free to ask it directly. I don't have to read it for you if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I just didn't want to interrupt. Yeah, so I'm curious what metrics Gainsight is using to actually track, like, what is time to value? So what metrics measure that value has been achieved, and you're able to date stamp that?
Yeah, so we think of value in 2 ways. One is first time to launch, and then the second one is time to achieving the objectives that you had when you bought the product, right? So the first one, the numbers that I'm showing here are like mostly time to launch, along with now we are starting to also track. If you've got 3 different objectives that you wanted from Gainsight, you probably wanted a full view of customer 360 across all data systems in Gainsight. You want efficiency for your CSMs. You want improvement in retention or expansion, all of those goals. What is delivered as part of the onboarding process? So we track both of those in addition to the usual professional services metrics around NPS as part of the onboarding process. So did you achieve outcomes, and did you actually achieve the experience that you wanted working with Gainsight as well? Cool. Excellent. And then we obviously, I also wanted to take the time to introduce Steph. Steph, if you're on the call, say hello. I'll quickly introduce you.
Hello, hello.
Awesome. Thank you for joining. So obviously, like once we made these changes on paper, to make it reality, we wanted awesome client partners of ours who were willing to take a bet and go through this process, see what works, give us feedback, etc. And Automatic was a client that actually raised their hand and said, we'll go through this process. So Steph, who leads customer success for WordPress VIP, was kind enough to, one, bet on this process and work with us, give us feedback, but then also join us today to walk through what her experience has been as part of this process. So Steph, if you want to maybe spend a few minutes talking about, one, like what was Automatic trying to solve and what were you trying to do with Gainsight? And then what did that process, the onboarding process and experience look like from your standpoint?
Sure, thank you. So hi, everyone. My name is Steph Yu. I lead customer success at WordPress VIP, which provides enterprise WordPress. We're a business unit within Automatic, and I'm based out of Boston. I'm the one that went to my executive team and my team and said, we need to transition to customer success. And I want to say thank you to Nick and the Gainsight team for writing many, many books and providing a lot of thought leadership on that, because it definitely helped my case. I built our customer success and our customer facing team from about 8 people to now 80+ people. And it is a massive change management program for me to transition our team from a reactive posture to a proactive posture. And part of that bet and part of that transition that I pitched to our executive team was Gainsight. Obviously, there's process, there's people involved in the transition, but there's also technology. And so being able to show a rapid time to value or show and demonstrate to my team that there were quick wins was absolutely essential to that change management program. And a couple things I'll call out. The first is that Gainsight was really good at setting expectations. So in the slide, Ashvin showed that there were kind of phases that they were looking at. And that just helped me set expectations with my broader team, who was already asking, like, why customer success? What are we doing, Steph? What is this road that you're guiding me on? And I was able to set expectations, because expectations determine experience. Hey, by the end of phase 1, you're going to see integration with Salesforce. And by the end of phase 3, you're going to see integration with Zendesk. And once we got to see those quick wins where people on my team were logging into Zendesk and seeing things like customer health scores and customer data, or we could just use in Slack, quickly, like / command, and be able to pull customer data, my team was just starting to get convinced in that change management program. The other was all of the tips and guidance along best practices. So we engaged with a professional services team at Gainsight because that time to value was so important. And because we didn't have, in-house customer success experts, that we were really working with the thought partners. So the fact that a lot of the best practices were built into the program just helped my team and my operations team hit the ground running. And the final thing is those data connectors are critical. Gainsight's a really powerful program, but it can also be really complicated. And for us, we also have a number of touch points that we use to monitor how our enterprises engage with VIP. So being able to pull that data in rapidly, which was one of the places that we were expecting the most slowdowns, was just really powerful. So I'll hand it back to you, Ashvin, but that's just a quick overview of how that lean methodology was important to us.
Awesome. Thank you, Steph. And yeah, the teams, we've enjoyed working with you and all the feedback that we've gotten throughout that process. So looking to do more and more with the WordPress VIP team. Awesome. I'll open the forum up for Q&A and see if folks have anything else to add, or Matt, Pablo, Nick, anything else to add from your end too?
Yeah, and I'd also love to hear from people if they've gone through a similar experience of reducing time to value and if they want to share as well.
Hey, Andre, are you still on from Receipt Bank?
I am, yes.
Yeah, so for other people, because I know we're highlighting the amazing work that Nick has done here with Ashvin. So typically, and I'll introduce Andre in a second. So I've done lean sessions with Matt probably 21 times now. And I can pretty much guarantee that regardless of what lean session you pick, you'll end up seeing 20 to 25% improvement in time to value or whatever metric you pick. I think it's astronomical and amazing that Nick and Ashvin have gotten 66% improvement. Like that is beyond what we would ever imagine, but it's great. And Andre, who's part of another one of our portfolio companies, be great if you could also just share high level. I know you just finished engaging with Matt and you all had your readout to the executives, but just so others can hear not only the Gainsight story, but what you guys have done just so people can collate the two differences and the progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Andre, and I'm the head of business systems with Receipt Bank, which is a SaaS company like yourselves, I'm sure. Our challenge was that we didn't have a good understanding of our lead to cash processes, right, which are so integral to every business. We didn't have them mapped end to end. We didn't necessarily leverage all the teams that are involved within this space. And Matt was really extremely valuable. His extremely valuable input was put to work in 4 sessions. We actually split a couple of teams up with SMEs from each department involved in the lead to cash process. We split those 2 teams up, and we actually asked them to map the end-to-end process, the same end-to-end process within those teams. And what was super interesting to find out at the end was that they came up with the same problem that they wanted to experiment the solution to, right? Without having spoken to one another, with those sessions, very far in between. Actually, they came up with the same problem. So it was very interesting to find out that just by putting our minds together and by using this methodology, you could actually pinpoint the log jams to your process. Not only look at the whole process and map it out, but also pinpoint the log jams where you want to concentrate your efforts to. And yeah, like Pablo mentioned, we've only just had our readout today, just before this webinar. So I think that was received well by our senior leadership team. And now we're just looking at the next steps and how we make that a reality. But I'm sure we'll get massive gains from it ourselves. And we're very appreciative to Matt for having delivered a great few sessions on Lean and actually delivering this over Zoom. So which is obviously the virtual experience is not possibly not as good as the physical one, but it was very well delivered. So thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll have to find a way to do the virtual car simulation virtually, because live, it's actually one of my favorite exercises, even if I've done it 20 times. One more question to Nick before it would be good if you guys could think of something to ask if you want to hear directly from Nick or from Ashvin or for us. But Nick, obviously the importance of getting software up and running quickly for customers is critical, right? One, so they can see the value. Obviously, from a revenue perspective and accounting stuff, there's importance there. But for the retaining customers, making sure they're happy, et cetera. So 66% improvement in time to value. What are you hearing from customers now that you can get them up and running quicker? Anything exciting or initial feedback that you're getting?
Yeah, totally. I mean, as I said, those sort of impacts on the financials go without saying. And I think if you just really made it very precise, one of the things that happens is the longer your time to value, the more you're exposed. I think a lot of us have been in a situation where you sell software, it doesn't get implemented, and for whatever reasons, could be you, could be the client, whatever. And then, along the way, the customer gets acquired or the exec sponsor changes or whatever. And I really think the longer you are in implementation, the longer you're exposed. So how do you reduce that exposure on both sides? And obviously you do it fast and you have a great advocate. There's an example, and again, being vulnerable, this was not a strength of Gainsight. This was something we weren't great at and we needed to get better. And so we had a customer who had actually bought Gainsight many times before, went to a new company as a CIO of a company, about $100 million revenue company. And he had, he's like, we all, Gainsight's great functionality wise. We got concerns about time to value. We were like, hey, we've got this new process, et cetera, et cetera. And we went through it, and the CIO wrote me the nicest note and was like, you guys proved it wrong. You need to tell everyone about your new process. We're such big fans. The only concern we had is now completely gone. And so, it does take a while to educate the market and get that word out there. So if you go through this, obviously you have to go educate people internally and externally, but the impact is massive. It's also massive, Pablo, as you and I both have a lot of experience in sales, on the sales side, right? So the sales team having confidence in your implementation process, in your time to value, being able to talk about it confidently and articulate why it's going to be great. And we all know, like, when things are real, people can, you can tell. And so you can hear in the confidence of the salespeople if you listen to some of our recorded sales calls now versus a year ago. It's also, I think, culturally helped, because I think when you have time to value issues or implementation issues or whatever, it creates a lot of back and forth inside a company, like sales, customer success, services, pointing fingers, right? And no matter how good your culture is, that's kind of natural. And I think this really brings people together. So yeah, it's been a just total game changer.
I'll actually add a note about that exposure piece, because as a customer, when we were doing discovery and we met with a handful of different customer success platform providers, that was something that your competitors used against you, right? They would say, well, Gainsight takes a while to implement. And it wasn't until we spent time with your sales team and asked them questions and got to meet your professional services team that started to change, that education cycle started to change the opinion. And the fact that within, I think, 8 weeks, I was able to run a demo in front of my entire business on the phase 1 of Gainsight implementation was incredibly powerful.
Thanks, Steph, for saying that. You're totally right. The word gets out around whatever your time to value is, good or bad. So I think that's a really good point as well. I think also, by the way, this year, Pablo, which I'm sure you've seen this too, this year, because of the pandemic in 2020, I think people have even a greater expectation of time to value, because anytime there's an uncertainty in the world, people don't want to make decisions that take a long time to pay out. And so I think this year, when I talked to clients, they were more focused on time to value than ever.
Very good. Any other questions for Nick or Matt or anybody at Insight on the process, or is anybody dealing with similar issues in your portco or company? Don't say you're not.
Yeah, I've got a Nick. Hi, Andy Barton here from Tricentis, ex-Reich.
Hey.
Really interesting point regarding the getting services positioned early in the sales cycle, something you didn't do before, but you're doing now. Well done, and putting hand up, by the way. Are you using your sales team to position services, or are you bringing in principal consultants or senior consultants to help them paint out the journey to value? Typically,
that's a great question.
Backup in the sales org is I find very beneficial, but I'm curious how you guys do that.
I agree. Ashvin, do you want to share how we do kind of professional services engagement in sales?
Yeah. So we do it. Hey, Andy, nice to see you again.
Hey, Ashvin. Good.
So we do it 2 ways. One is we've got like very off the shelf packages, which we have the sales team pitch, especially for the quick time to value and the smaller customer base, SMB customers for us as well. But if you want anything custom and if you want more things included, which are not offered out of the box in terms of the packages that we have, then we actually have an engagement manager be involved directly in the sales cycle. So what we've done is basically in the sales process, as you go through an opportunity milestone and an opportunity pipeline, at a particular stage, like call it 50% into that pipeline cycle, you have to start including that engagement manager. And they are the ones who do all the scoping, to Steph's point, have a conversation about what the process will look like, what you can expect once you become a customer, and all of that good stuff. So we've got both flavors of it.
Super. Super.
Yeah.
Well done. What percentage, just one on that one, what percentage of your deal? So do you make services mandatory?
Yes, some form of services is mandatory for all the onboarding process. It's less about, and like we've created packages that are more affordable, if you will. But the reason is we mandate it because it's more the making sure that things are built to best practices, because what we want to make sure is like 6 months in, 12 months in, we don't want clients to tell us that what we've built is not as per the best practices that we put out and that is touted in the community, right? Like it's a big differentiator for us as a company is just the knowledge sharing and the community building around best practices. So that's why we basically have services.
Super, well done, thank you.
Anybody else?
Another benefit I think might be interesting is that we also have a partner community that implements, Gainsight. And I think, Ashvin, all the work that your team's done in partnership with Matt and others has also helped our partners in their own methodology implement faster, right? I don't know if you want to add on that.
Yeah, and I think Tom has a similar question on the chat as well. So what we basically have done, so one, in the workshop that Matt led with Gainsight and Insight, we actually had a couple of our partners attend that session too. So we had Gainsight consultants and CS and sales, but we also got some partners to join. Once we created this process, we actually started experimenting and seeing what we can learn, what worked, what didn't work to cut back on waste. And then we took that to our partners to say, here is what we've learned, here is real progress that we are seeing. And so now they've built those same processes into their methodology as well. And now that is now translating into partners' projects also having the same experience and the time to value that we are seeing internally. So it was a phased approach, and we've definitely involved them throughout that process.
Cool.
Great.
Yeah, I've got another question here.
Awesome. Yeah.
What are y'all's plans to use this going forward? Obviously, you've made huge bounds with using Lean to improve onboarding, but how do you take it a step further? What's the next step for Gainsight?
Yeah, Ashvin, you want to share your thoughts? I can add
Yeah,
some too.
happy to. Yes, I think the next step is now doing a couple of things. One is I will never say that we've achieved what we wanted to achieve. There's still more to do. There's still more optimization that we can do, even in the current process, whether that is more best practices in the product itself, more dashboards, etc., built out of the box. So there's more learnings that we are getting as we go through this process, which we'll do, which are, call it incremental improvements to what already exists. So we'll continue pushing on that. The second piece that we are learning as we go through this process is folks want to, actually two other learnings. One is as customers start seeing early value, they want to now start including and basically go against the process of the Lean that we are recommending and do more and more very quickly in the product, which is good. But I want my team to push back and make sure that we are still sticking with the program, because longer term, that is super helpful. So there is some change management, both from the client end as well as Gainsight's consultant end, to Steph's point, to basically build out that workflow, push back, be the challenger mindset throughout that process, because it is good for the longer term value for clients. So that is a second thing that will continue to evolve. And then a third thing that I think will continue to increase and will continue to evolve is this idea of how can we take this to even our most custom enterprise onboarding, the much larger ones that take much longer. How can we start including these even in those types of processes to even reduce time to value for them? Custom doesn't have to mean longer time to value. It's the general idea. So we'll take the learnings to other segments as well.
I mean, the only other thing I'd add in is we probably worth a whole nother webinar. We created a role under Ashvin called VP of Customer Experience to look at the end-to-end experience for our customers, which I'm sure many of you over time will do the same thing outside of the silos of services and customer success. And I think that there's many, many points of time to value in a customer journey. And one of those, as an example, that I think we're getting a lot of focus on is the area of kind of new executive, new admin at the customer. And how do you get faster value? So it's an existing customer, they've rolled out Gainsight, they're using it. But if your business is like ours, when there's new people, there's some aspect of it being kind of a new customer. And so whether it's a new admin managing Gainsight and they can take it over and learn about it and make it their own, or it's a new executive trying to get different value out of Gainsight, I think there's an opportunity to apply this concept throughout our customer journey, and probably similar for you as well. So time to value never ends. It's a continuous process. Pablo, thank you. I guess back to you. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. 2 more questions from Greg. Greg, do you want to ask those? Or do you want me to read them out?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, nice job moving the needle on the metrics. I found in my experience when you move time to value earlier up in the process, kind of like a phased delivery approach per se, that my total time in implementation would increase. I was wondering if you guys were able to keep that consistent or if you saw any fluctuations as a result.
Yeah, even time to implementation dropped correspondingly for us. Now, I'll keep an eye out for what you said is true. I will keep my eye out for that remaining the same and not spiking over the next few quarters. But it's for us, we did see both of those reviews.
That's awesome. Second to that, so when the customer is utilizing the service earlier, you get into that like no man's land of the delivery manager is still active, delivering on the scope, but they're using it. So you kind of need a success manager in there. Did you guys change your model for that whatsoever, or were you able to do the balancing act without making any changes?
No, I think this is one that our CSMs are actually celebrating as much as our clients and the sales team and everyone else, because now what they're able to do is like, again, a separate, maybe a deep dive on this topic, but this idea of a maturity model for what you could be doing with Gainsight. So basically, like as part of the onboarding or implementation, you get certain objectives achieved as part of that process, but there's still so much more that you could be doing with Gainsight and as part of your CS program. And so what the CSM is now responsible for is, one, playing back the value that you got during onboarding or at the end of onboarding, but then creating a roadmap with the customer to say, you had these 3 objectives, only one of them was achieved as part of onboarding. Now let's focus on the other 2 as part of your roadmap and how to actually achieve them. And here are the workflows to do that. So it's a much better conversation than them stepping in and having a conversation about, oh, it took X amount of weeks to get value, like pacify the customer. It's just wasted cycles as part of that process. Now they're a lot more productive.
Awesome. Do they handle that Proserve work themselves after the fact, or is that work that the delivery team continues to bolt on and execute?
It's a combination. So in some cases, if you have the resources and the skill sets to do it, clients have done that on their own. In other cases, they've continued to contract with Gainsight to help them build that out as well. But both are very viable options.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Alex, you're up next with your questions.
Yeah, really interesting conversation, Alex, at Anthropology. It's just, how different did your process look, you know, kind of before and after this exercise?
So for us, before the process is what I showed you with the methodology that we had. So it was a very big bang approach. So you had to wait till the end of the program to actually log into Gainsight and experience it for your end users. And 2, there were very clear, it's called like a typical waterfall process where you go through some form of discovery, then you build, then you test, and then you launch, basically as part of that process. So we've changed that around in 2 different ways. One, we've gone more like agile, keeping the overall process still waterfall, but very agile sprints throughout that process. So the users can actually log in at the end of week 2 if you go with that approach and experience Gainsight much sooner. And then the second part that we've changed is more of a phased approach to say, you don't have to wait till the end. You can keep building, manage the change process with your users, so they keep doing more and more and more things in Gainsight over time, which actually helps with change management and adoption in the longer run as well.
Andre?
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess one question that comes to mind is how did you guys drive these lean-based improvements operationally within your company? How did you form? Did you form like a task-based or project team that that kind of drove these all these efforts that kind of went cross-functionally? Or did you have yourselves or somebody else as lean champions who kind of had a bigger weight to driving priorities within the companies to deliver these? Or how did you guys go about doing this?
Excellent question. So a couple of things, like Nick and I've tried to stay out of managing this process so that like the people in the teams who are actually responsible for it feel a sense of ownership and they drive this entire process. And so as part of that workshop, firstly, we included people that were going to drive this process on an ongoing basis. So everyone who becomes part of that cross-functional team was part of that workshop. So that was one. It's always important to have one champion, one accountable person. So for us, so we've got Rod Cherkas, who is my VP of professional services on the call. One superstar on his team, a director of PS, was essentially responsible for that process. So his job was to make sure that we bring together all of these cross-functional teammates and make sure we are making progress and building this out. And like the key stakeholders, I would say, at least for us, it was professional services, because we are making that process out of professional services, but someone from product who was equally vested in building things out of the box in the product itself. And so having product be part of that cross-functional team was important. Having sales be part of that cross-functional team was also important, because at the end of the day, like we want them to go to their sisters and brothers and have that conversation about, oh, wow, like we have changed the process. We should be pitching these new things. It's better for us. It's better for our customers, and change is coming, right? So they became our champion, if you will, within that sales community. And then the final stakeholder I'll call out as part of that process was someone from customer success, because again, like the natural friction point is fast time to value means you are getting something out the door very quickly, but that is not super comprehensive as we would have done in the prior world. And so CSMs coming in, their natural friction point is this enough? And like, why didn't you do more? And so having that conversation before it is built out is super critical as part of that process too. So that's how we ran that process.
Anyway. Yeah, makes sense. Thanks, Ashvin.
Cool, awesome. Well, hey, we're at 5-minute mark. I want to make sure we get everybody back to their next meeting. Thank you so much, Nick, Ashvin, and the entire Gainsight team. I mean, again, astronomical results. I don't think Matt, myself, or anybody on our team have ever seen 66% improvement. 20 to 25%, I can always guarantee, but congrats for setting the bar at a whole different level and really sharing the impact that you're doing. It's truly amazing. If anybody else has any additional questions, you can always reach out to Nick and Ashvin directly. Or feel free to ping myself or our team here at Insight. We're always happy to discuss this with you. And Andre, good luck with your organization, since I know you guys just finished this session, and I know Matt, May, and Travis are kicking off Lean with our other Portco 6 Sense this afternoon. So thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the week. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Cheers.